My husband said he was going on a week-long business trip, but he showed up 6 years later on my doorstep and said we needed to leave. 6 years ago my entire life completely stopped. My husband Elias packed a small black duffel bag and kissed my forehead in our kitchen. He told me he was flying out for a standard corporate consulting trip and would be back by Friday evening for dinner. Our son Leo had just turned 1 year old and was sleeping in his high chair. Elias walked out the front door, got into his car, and simply never came back. For the first few months I was a complete and absolute wreck. I filed multiple missing persons reports and called every single hospital within a 300-mile radius. The police found absolutely nothing. It was like he literally evaporated into thin air. His employer told the detectives they had no record of him being assigned to a trip that week. My friends and family eventually convinced me that Elias just abandoned us to start a new life somewhere else. I had to accept the brutal reality that I was a single mother. I spent the next 6 years building a quiet and safe routine for Leo and myself. Then came tonight. It was a Tuesday at 3 in the morning. A heavy thunderstorm was rattling the bedroom windows and the power had already flickered twice. I was fast asleep when a loud repetitive knocking echoed from the downstairs hallway. It was not a casual knock from a neighbor. It was frantic and incredibly heavy. Nobody knocks on a door at 3 in the morning with good news. My blood ran completely cold. I crept out of bed and grabbed the heavy metal flashlight from my nightstand. I walked silently down the wooden stairs trying not to make a single sound. The knocking started again, followed by a muffled voice calling my name through the thick wood. I knew that voice instantly. It was deeper and much rougher, but it belonged to Elias. My hands were shaking violently as I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the front door open. Elias stood on the porch soaking wet from the rain. He looked entirely different. He was significantly thinner and his face was covered in a thick dark beard. He had a deep red scar running along his jawline and his eyes were completely bloodshot. He did not look like the polished corporate consultant I married. He looked like a cornered animal who had not slept in days. Before I could even process what was happening, he stepped inside and slammed the door shut behind him. He immediately locked the deadbolt and flipped the security chain. He turned to me and grabbed my shoulders. His grip was incredibly tight. He told me I needed to listen to him very carefully and not ask any questions until we were safe. He said his name was still Elias, but his entire career was a fabricated lie. He was an undercover operative for the CIA. I thought I was having a psychotic break. I tried to pull away from him and told him to get out of my house. But he held on and looked me dead in the eye. The expression on his face completely chilled my bones. It was a look of pure terrifying seriousness. I had only seen him look like that once before when Leo was choking on a piece of food as a baby. It was the look of a man who knew death was seconds away. Elias spoke rapidly in a low whisper. He told me his deep cover position was compromised 6 years ago. He had intercepted a highly classified data drive containing the true identities of foreign sleeper agents operating undetected inside the United States. The exact moment he acquired the drive, a rival foreign intelligence agency put a massive bounty on his head. If he came home to us, they would have slaughtered Leo and me just to get the information out of him. He made the split-second decision to go completely off the grid and lead the foreign spies as far away from our family as possible. He spent the last 6 years running across Europe and South America trying to survive and keep the data out of their hands. I stared at him in complete disbelief. My brain was short-circuiting. I wanted to scream at him and hit him for leaving me alone to raise our son. But the sheer terror vibrating in his voice stopped me. He said the situation just changed drastically. The foreign agency finally tracked his movements back to our state. They knew he was in the area and they knew exactly where our house was. He said they were coming for us tonight and they were not going to hesitate to burn the house down with us inside. He looked at his watch and told me we had exactly 30 minutes before a secure extraction team arrived. We needed to pack 1 bag each and leave immediately. We could not bring anything electronic and we could not leave any obvious signs of a struggle. Panic completely took over my body. I sprinted upstairs to my bedroom and grabbed a gym duffel bag from the closet. I threw in jeans, thick sweaters, and underwear. I grabbed my passport and my metal lockbox with our birth certificates. My mind was racing a million miles an hour. My entire house, my career, and the life I built from scratch were about to be left behind forever. I ran down the hallway to Leo's room. He was fast asleep clutching his stuffed bear. He had just turned 7 years old last week. He barely even knew who his father was. I gently shook his shoulder. He rubbed his eyes and asked me what was wrong. I tried to keep my voice as steady as humanly possible. I told him we were going on a surprise midnight vacation and he needed to put his sneakers on right now. Leo was very confused, but he saw the intense urgency in my face. I stuffed his backpack with his favorite clothes, his toothbrush, and a few small toys. We walked downstairs together. Leo stopped at the bottom of the steps and stared at the strange bearded man standing in our hallway. Elias looked at his son for the first time in 6 years. I saw tears instantly well up in his eyes. He wanted to hug him so badly, but he knew we did not have the time. He just crouched down, smiled softly, and told Leo that he was a friend of Mommy and he was going to keep us very safe. Headlights suddenly flashed through the living room curtains. Elias peeked through the blinds and nodded. He grabbed our bags and told us to run straight for the back doors of the vehicle the second he opened the front door. I grabbed Leo by the hand and we bolted out into the pouring rain. A massive black armored SUV was idling in the driveway with the headlights off. Two men in full tactical gear were standing outside holding automatic rifles. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen in my life. They opened the heavy armored doors and we climbed inside. Elias jumped into the front passenger seat and the SUV instantly sped away before the doors were even fully shut. Nobody spoke a single word during the drive. I held Leo tightly against my chest while he fell back asleep. The men in the front were communicating through earpieces in a language I did not recognize. We drove for 45 minutes through dark empty back roads until we reached a small private airfield completely hidden by trees. A sleek black private jet was waiting on the tarmac with the engines already running. The armed men escorted us up the stairs and into the cabin. The moment the heavy cabin door sealed shut, the plane began moving. We were in the air within 2 minutes. The cabin was incredibly luxurious, but it felt exactly like a flying prison. Elias finally walked to the back of the plane and collapsed into the leather seat across from me. He looked physically and mentally exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off and the massive reality of the situation was settling in. For the next 14 hours Elias explained every single detail. He told me about the dirty safe houses and the terrifying close calls. He told me how he accessed my social media every single day through highly encrypted servers just to watch Leo grow up from a distance. He told me how much it absolutely destroyed him to miss birthdays and holidays and first days of school. He swore to me that he never stopped loving us and every single choice he made was calculated to keep us breathing. He explained that the foreign agents hunting him were absolutely ruthless. They had already eliminated 3 of his former contacts in completely staged accidents. He said the only reason he finally came back was because the CIA intercepted a communication confirming the agents had my name and our home address. Coming back was the ultimate last resort. I was furious, heartbroken, and completely terrified all at the exact same time. But sitting there looking at the deep scar on his face and the exhaustion in his eyes, I knew he was telling the absolute truth. He sacrificed his entire life and his freedom to protect us from a threat I never even knew existed. We landed just as the sun was starting to set. I looked out the oval window and saw massive snow-capped mountains stretching for miles. Elias told me we were in a remote quiet town in Switzerland. The CIA had set up a secure permanent safe house for us completely off the grid. A local intelligence contact met us on the runway and drove us through the winding mountain roads. We drove for another hour until we reached a beautiful stone chalet hidden deep inside a dense pine forest. It was completely isolated and surrounded by high-tech security cameras. We walked inside the house and Elias locked the heavy wooden door behind us. He turned to me and finally let out a massive sigh of relief. The nightmare of constantly running was officially paused. He sat me down on the couch and told me the agency was actively working to dismantle the foreign spy network that was hunting him. He said we would have to stay in Switzerland and live under brand new identities for the time being. We could not contact our family back home or use our old bank accounts. But he promised me with absolute certainty that within a year or two the threat would be completely neutralized. Once the agents were caught, we could finally go back home and resume a normal life. I looked over at my son, who was excitedly exploring the massive living room and looking out at the snow. Then I looked at the husband who literally came back from the dead to save our lives. I still feel completely overwhelmed and I do not know what the next 2 years will look like. But we are alive, we are safe, and we are finally a family again. Subscribe for more daily videos.